Welcome back for another episode of Seeking Discovery. I'm glad you decided to join us again. So in the last video, I was finishing up the electrical back here and getting that all squared away and ready to go. And everything seems to be working still since getting that done. The bus starts up just great. The air conditioners work. So that's really nice when it's on a super hot day. If it's really hot in the bus, I can always close up the windows and run the bus for like 15 minutes and blast the air conditioning in and get it to cool down, which is really nice to have again. So today we are headed back inside the bus to keep working, and the goal is to get all of the framing members up on the ceiling and start working on the lower portions of the walls. And basically these are going to be anchor points when we put in the ceiling and the walls, and ultimately give extra space for the spray foam that we'll have put in once all of this stuff is ready to go. So let's jump back inside the bus, start cutting some wood and attaching it to those members inside. Well guys, I have another update for you. As you can see, we are starting to get some of these upper ribs here, and basically what I did is, if we look at this one up here, I've got these self-tapping screws that went into pre-drilled holes on the actual pieces, and then those anchored into the metal. So what I used, and I'll put a link in the description below So what I used, and if you guys are curious, I'll put a link in the description below, is these Tex self-tapping screws. And technically they're self-tapping and self-drilling, and you could drill them straight into the wood. But what I decided to do was pre-drill them. So I pre-drilled the wood, stuck the screw in, held it up, and then used my impact driver to drive them in the rest of the way. And it went really quick that way, although I just noticed I forgot one here, so I'll have to go back and do that. But as you can see, I've got most of the ribs done, which is ultimately where our ceiling will get anchored in. And my goal is to do tongue and groove, I think cedar boards is what I'm gonna do, but this will give me a spot to screw those in as I put the ceiling up. So I'm really excited these went up quick. The next steps will be down here and filling in the lower area to do our side paneling, and that will give us areas to run our electrical boxes and things like that, and all of our wiring and some of the plumbing. So ultimately that's what will happen on the lower portion. But for today, I think we're gonna call it now that the ceiling's basically done, and clean up things, and then come back out here another day and focus on doing the lower portion of the walls and getting that all figured out. So we'll see you guys when we're back out here next. So today we are continuing to work on, if you can see here, the strapping along the sides of the bus, which will help, basically the finished wood gets attached to it. So they're considered nailers, and it allows us to have a spot to attach the finished wood, as well as help leave a gap for spray foam. So when my family was out here, they helped get a lot of it prepped. Rip down, cut, all of that kind of stuff. So they are back to their normal day-to-day lives, and I'm back out here at the bus continuing along. So as you can see, I'm working on the upper sections here behind me, and basically what I've been doing is pre-drilling a hole. After learning, I was using self-tapping screws before, and they were just really difficult to get in, but to go in with a drill bit was really easy. So I've switched to pre-drilling these holes through the wood, through the metal, and now I'm using an 1.25" screw to adhere the wood to the metal of the bus. And once this first layer's down, a second layer of the 3/4 ply is added on top with just wood screws offset from where the metal screws ended up. And the reason that we're doing the 2 layers here, different than how we did the ceiling, is to help with thermal bridging. Ultimately, the bus is metal. We want to stop the heat from coming through in any path it can. So by putting the 2 layers of 3/4" plywood, offsetting the screws, we're helping to break that thermal bridge and hopefully help keep things from forming condensation down the road. So I'll show you guys how I'm doing this. Again, pre-drilling, putting the screw in, and then we're coming back with a second layer of plywood so that there will be a total of 1.5 inches thick to really create a good gap for spray foam, which will be coming up soon, hopefully. So as you can see on the lower portion of the walls, we've already got the plywood on. So it's 2 pieces thick. We've got the wood screws here, and then on the inside one is where we've got those sheet metal screws. And we were using these self-tapping screws, and I switched those out for just regular sheet metal screws, but still have the same head. And that seems to be working pretty well pre-drilling it. And ultimately the process is going really quick. So on the top here you can see we've got the screws in, and this piece is attached. So I need to finish the rest of the bus, and then we'll put the second layer on top of this to have it ready to go. And that'll also help create a gap in here for us to put all of the bus wiring that's left over back in there and out of the way when we put our finished ceiling in. Okay, now that we're back up to the front of the bus, we're gonna work on putting these upper nailers in. So like I said, we're gonna do 2 layers of 3/4 inch plywood that's been ripped down to 1.5 inch strips. So I've got the other side completely done for the first layer, so this is how you put the first layer up on this side of the bus. I'm gonna start by grabbing an 8-foot section of that 3/4 inch plywood that I ripped down, get it clamped up here so that I can pre-drill my holes. So I also left a gap up here so that the air conditioner lines can run through there. So this one will be offset a little bit. So I'm just going to take one of my little clamps. So there we go, we got it clamped. We've got it pretty much on the edge of the window here to try to frame it out kind of nicely. So I have seen other people leave extra room for boards and whatnot, but I think I'm just gonna leave this pretty simply because I'll do curtains on top and the couch and countertops and stuff will be down here. So I'm not real worried about what the top of these look like, at least on the bottom and here as well. So I'm gonna grab my drill with my drill bit and I'm gonna pre-drill through the wood and the metal for these nailers. And then I'm just gonna go every like 3/4 of a window length down my 8-foot board. Now that we've got our pre-drills in, we're gonna come back in with our sheet metal screws. These are 1¼ inch number 8 truss washer needle screws. So these are sheet metal screws. I was originally using self-tappers, but now that I'm pre-drilling, these worked better, and I could get them at my local hardware store because I ran out of the other ones. So we're just taking our Phillips head screwdriver on our impact, and we're gonna go into these holes we just pre-drilled. Another tip you can do, because I pre-drilled the holes smaller than the threads, you can actually put the screw on in reverse to kind of bore out the wood, because ultimately you don't care if the threads grab the wood, and then go back to forward, and that will really dig into the metal and kind of bury the head in the wood. And you can see this one buried a lot more than this one did. But that's not that big of a deal because the next piece of plywood will ultimately be squeezed down to it. And we're just gonna keep doing that down the rest of the length of the bus, and then we'll come back with our second layer of plywood, and we'll use just regular wood screws to attach those two pieces together. So now that we got the rest of this side of the bus all screwed in for the first layer, it's time to go back for the second layer. So as you can see behind me, there is a second piece of wood on here now, and I've offset it from this end because ultimately there will be a cap piece that goes over where the air conditioner stuff comes through, and that'll come later. So this is just a leftover piece from before. It is not a full 8 foot, and that is deliberate so that our seams don't overlap as we go down the side of the bus. So you can see this one ends right here. So I'm just gonna put a couple of screws in, and then I'll take a new 8 foot piece of the plywood and do that next so that we don't have our seams line up, and it just creates a more rigid structure, as well as, again, it helps combat the thermal bridging that we are ultimately trying to avoid by doing this 2-step process. Whereas on the roof, we did do the 2x2 approximately and just screwed that right into the rib. And the main reason we did that on the ceiling and not the walls is the ceiling we didn't have the headroom to afford the 1.5 inch extra space. So that's why I ultimately did the 2x2s on the ceiling, and we're doing this 3/4 plus 3/4 method on the sides. So to attach these two pieces together, we're just using a T25 wood screw. And again, we're using our impact driver just like before, coming in and just gonna secure them. Do your best to line them up with each other so that they look nice when it's all finished. And there we go, we got our second layer up here, which again will give us our depth for running cables and stuff, as well as our spray foam. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up this side of the bus.